Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Forman. Today we have Jake Sachs with us, and we are talking about the AIPA Big Boy Sting in Surftech's Fusion HD EPS epoxy technology. Jake, I got it. All in the first clip.
Yep.
So, Jake, let's talk about this board a little bit and who you think it's for and just your general overall impressions. I just want to start out by saying this is a Big Boy Sting, and there is a reason that they put big in the first letter of the name, first word of the name.
There's a lot of board for a pointy nose, that's
right?
for sure.
Awesome. Let's talk about dimensions first. Let's just get after it.
Dimensions: 8.0 by 23 3/8, 3 13/16 thick, and coming in at 74.95 liters. So that's a lot of literage.
So, I mean, it is sub 75.
Yep.
I mean, technically, right? I mean, it's 74.95.
Yep.
It's below 75.
Yep.
So, you know, it's kind of reining in on performance.
Yeah, yeah.
And just for giggles, how, because I'm closing in on big boy status, right? At like 6 foot plus and 200 pounds.
Right.
What are your height and weight?
5'10", 160.
Okay, so you're not a big boy.
Not a big boy.
All right.
So jumping on it, I thought the board was gonna overwhelm me a little bit. I didn't know that I'd be able to turn it, but I thought, hey, I'd give it a go. And I was really surprised because it was turnable. And then I tried just pushing it as hard as I could. So kind of a game of like, how hard could you throw this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to get quite a bit of the board out of the water on on turns. You know?
Right,
like,
right.
Maybe this much of the nose kind of out.
Yep, above the lip.
Above the lip, and it would get into waves super early, and I think that's the beauty of it. Like, it chips into waves so early, but then has enough rocker to not get hung up when they sort of bowl out.
Yep.
So paddle's great and gets into waves early, and then you can toss it around a little bit. There were waves where it felt big, obviously, because I'm not a big boy. But man, if you are, over 200 pounds, I think this is your shortboard, basically.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This thing.
I don't even when I look at this board and I held this board, I didn't even consider myself in the weight range at 200 for it. But I noticed exactly what you noticed, is that it surfs smaller than the volume in the ways that you need it to, but not in the ways that you don't need it to, right? You want the paddle speed, and this thing is like a speed machine for paddling and also for catching waves. It's crazy, like how far out you can sit and like how far you can fade your takeoff and before you whip into the direction that you're going to go. But the fact that the board didn't fight you, like normally, and we talked about this with the Big Brother Sting, normally a board that's that big compared to how much you weigh, there's going to be something that just feels awkward and bucky and kind of unbalanced, and a lot of times volume doesn't help you even for paddling. You end up plowing through the water. This doesn't have any of those sensations. It just feels really neutral for how big it is, which is really cool, because I think that and the technology that is built in, that Surftech Fusion HD, which makes it lighter, opens the doors to people sub 200 pounds riding it and really appreciating it.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times, like you were saying, these boards, when they get this much length on them and this much volume, the rocker combo and the volume placement and stuff can get a little wonky, and they will either get into waves really early but then not surf that well, or surf okay or surf well, but you can't paddle them. And this was an epic combo of both of those things. So if you are looking for a board and you're a little scared of the volume or the length or whatever, I think you can take confidence that you'll be able to surf this thing even if you're a little smaller than you'd think.
And it all comes down to if you're not surfing, you're not surfing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people out there that don't have enough volume in their boards, and it's easy to point that out in shortboarding, but even when you look at fun boards and longboards, people aren't catching a lot of waves, and so something like this allows you to catch a lot of waves, but in this design just gives you more maneuverability, and more late drop potential and the ability to do some proper turns on it.
And a lot of that has to do with these stinger wings and the tail, so we can get into talking a little bit about what that's for.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I mean, talking about the Sting, I mean, that's a design that Duke's dad introduced in the 70s, and it keeps the volume of the board forward, like where you need it, under your chest for paddling and for catching waves. But then once you get to this Sting break point, you can see the tail from there on back gets a lot narrower. And so that gives you more control and like more of a neutral feel under your foot. Like if you ran that width all the way out the back of the board, there'd be so much power underneath your foot that you wouldn't be able to like control the board. Like you would just keep going in a straight line. You wouldn't be able to turn. So that reduces the area of the tail, which allows you to like surf it more aggressively and more in control. It also provides like a break point in the outline. So like and that'll give you a pivot point in your turn, kind of like what they're doing on like wing tails or bump wing tails. And then also if we flip it this way and then look at the foil of the wing, it's actually going from thick to thin. It's right here, it's as thin as the end of the tail. And so that is going to give you more bite in the turns and allow you to put that rail like down into the water for more grip and like more control in the turns.
Yeah, and I love that they do the swallowtail on this too, because it adds another point to turn off of instead of, if you did a squash or a round tail, it would add a little more hold. This loosens it up, but also still makes that point to turn off of when you're turning. So classic AIPA design that's stood the test of time. So I like that they're kind of revamping it in newer bottom contours, modern kind of designs with the old school feel to it.
So let's talk about the fins. Let's flip this thing over, look at the fins. Like we rode a bunch of different fins on this board, all from NVS. We started out with the NVS Horseman quads, which are these right here. So, and I, selfishly, if I had been thinking about Jake, I would have put mediums in, but I didn't. I put larges in because I was just thinking about myself. So these are the AIPA Horseman quads. G10 construction, really thin foil because you can get away with that in G10. Thinner is faster. And these are also end up being quite a bit stronger than a standard production fin. And the Horseman quads, they pair really well on this board, and Duke recommends them. For the board with the quads, it's got more shortboard style, like kind of more drive, more like projection down the line. Like you could definitely surf the board more aggressively. And my first sessions, probably like my first 4 sessions, were on this setup, like in decent waves too, like kind of mid-thigh to probably shoulder on those days, and that was like south of the lighthouse. When we pulled into these smaller summer sessions, like up near the shop, we wanted to play around with the 2+1, right? So that's got the clutch center fin. I think that's about a 7 1/4 with NVS 3.7 side bites. And I remember you and I talking about it on the beach. Like we wanted like more of like a pivot. We wanted to like get in early, a fade, and then like a pivot, like off of that 2+1. And tell me about what you thought on that one.
Yeah, you could really feel the difference with the quads versus the 2+1. And with the 2+1, it did have that like center fin pivot, almost more like a thruster. You could surf it a little bit more like your standard thruster in that you could fade and then pivot and then come right up into the lip kind of and float the little section and then drop in and really, your turns were really a lot more like 90-degree angle, like pivoty. With the quads, they made more down the line speed, and with both fins really, you could close out the inside section. And even on the whitewater, if they got a little bit of whitewater under the fins, it wasn't going to throw you off. I think that had to do with just the overall rocker and volume too. It would project you into the flats, and you could kind of ride out of those. So
one thing when we went into this fin setup that I learned, which I hadn't experienced before, so it's kind of cool, like this far down the track, learning new things, is we did this fin setup, and I think you were the first one to ride it. You rode it on that micro day behind the shop, and you had a really good time on it. The next session that I had was a little bit further down the beach. It just felt like too maneuverable, like there was no drive, and it was like all maneuver. It was like this, And so I looked at the fin setup, and the center fin was in the middle of the box. So I'm like, man, that's kind of like probably where it should be, But then I looked at the side bites, and these NVS side bites are all the way back in the box. Typically fins are centered in a box, but these things are all the way in the back of the box, which then puts them closer to the trailing fin, right? And so your cluster's super tight. And And so whenever you have a super tight cluster, it's going to make it maneuverable, but not, you're going to lack drive.
Yep.
You know, and so I just literally kicked this thing back, you know, half, 3/4 of an inch, and it was absolute magic.
Yeah.
Like I remember coming back and saying, like, now it's on. Like
Yeah.
this thing feels really, really good. The last thing I want to touch on is the construction. So this is an EPS core epoxy resin. It's made by Surftech. It's called Fusion HD. And I think what this adds to the board is it keeps the weight reasonable, given like how big, you know, this board is. I mean, if you build a 75-liter PU poly, it's going to be heavy. You know, and I think that momentum may help in certain situations, but I think overall, like in these boards, like it's, unless you're riding like all wind all the time and big waves only,
Right.
I think the EPS is nice, you know,
Yeah.
like it's cool to have the lighter weight and a board this big, especially if you're not a big person.
Yeah.
You know, like where the handling of the board becomes more critical.
Yeah, definitely. It livens up the 75 liters quite a bit, but you still retain the wooden stringer.
Yep.
So you still have that flex characteristic of the wood that people are used to.
Right.
And just nice, light, lively glass schedule and EPS foam. So
Yeah, and we've got a lot of sessions on this board, and I mean not only a lot of sessions but a lot of waves, because you catch a lot of waves on this board.
Yeah.
And you know, it's starting to get some heel impressions, but not like, you know, caves.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it is important, like, because a lot of people think epoxy is like no heel impressions, so it's just like a hard brick.
Right.
You know, the heel impressions are, I think, part of the feel of the board. Like it gives you a little bit more grip on the board, and you know you're in the right place, and it also lowers your foot down into the deck a little bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, I could see a little bit of one here, you know, and in the back, but for how many sessions we have on that board, and also the fact that there's no cracks on the string or anything like that. No, it's held up really, really well.
Yeah, the epoxy resin is a little more elastic, so it'll dent without cracking, and so
Okay.
that's nice as well, because you get those heel impressions, but you don't have to worry about it cracking out and leaking water or anything like that.
All right, so range of surf.
Whew, we put it in all kinds of surf. We put it like micro small, and then some like chest high sats. I think you even had some even bigger days. So I think it's got a really wide range of surf. I think it probably maxes out, probably max at about chest, shoulder high-ish. I don't know that I want to put it in head high surf. But,
Right.
and then as far as small size, I think you can go as small as, you know, waist, shin maybe. Yeah.
I mean, some of that stuff we wrote it in was tiny.
Tiny, yeah. So huge range of surf, and then just a bunch of fun in all conditions. You know, like being able to maneuver it even in the bigger stuff was awesome.
Yeah, and this is coming from like a 160 pounder.
Yeah, right,
you know,
right,
and so like you're talking like shin to you know, chest to shoulder or
Yeah.
something like that. You know, and I think, you know, if you're bigger, like if you're my size, like you can start riding this into, you know, playful head high waves
Totally.
or above head high. Like, you know, as it starts to get heavy and it's like completely grinding, that's going to take a bigger server
Yes,
to be
totally.
able to manage and maneuver a board of this size.
Yeah.
But you know, it was just a lot of fun with how electric this thing made pretty junky surf.
Yeah.
Like when the waves were small or the waves were like all junked out. Like it was just so much fun, like surfing this thing and making something out of nothing. Like I could just walk over the dune with this and know that I was going to get like 5 waves and have a good time. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So it being made for the bigger guy or gal, I think they would love it.
Right.
Definitely could push the limits of like this would be their shortboard, but then I think someone even stepping down from a longboard or in that fun board realm of someone looking for something to progress on, isn't quite ready for a shortboard, maybe isn't ready for the squirreliness of a fish.
Yeah.
This would be epic for them because they could surf all those conditions, got a lot of volume, got a lot of paddle power, learning to throw turns and maneuver it around a bit. So,
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, because again, like just the number of waves you get, it's going to help them progress
Yeah.
a lot more. And like I mean, a lot of times on this board, you don't even have to paddle to
Right,
take off. You
yeah.
just cock it, like you put it in the water, and then it just comes out, and you're surfing. So that's a wrap. Jake, thanks so much for helping us out with this one. It's always great to get your insight. For those of you out there that have questions about the AIPA Big Boy Sting or would like to place an order for one, you can always give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.